This video will be my wrap-up of my mid versus high price trail bike project. For this project, I spent a month switching between a high price trail bike, which was a 2017 Giant Trans Advance 1, and a mid-price trail bike, which happened to be a 2018 Giant Trans 2, which was an aluminum bike with aluminum wheels. This project was not about reviewing a specific brand or model of bike, but rather looking at the differences in ride quality and components that you get when going from what I consider a mid-level price up to a higher level price. Before I get any further in this video, I do want to thank Bike Works of Gainesville, who helps me get my hands on these bikes, and I couldn't do it without them. So if you're looking for a bike shop in the North Central Florida area, I recommend checking them out. Let's first define what I consider a mid-price trail bike. That is one that's going to cost you about $2,000 up to about $3,800 US. And a high price trail bike would be about $4,000 and on up from there. I've identified three main benefits as you move up in price levels of bicycles. One is the higher end bikes are going to be lighter weight. Two, they're going to be stiffer. And three, they're going to have better performance, mainly in terms of braking, shifting, suspension, and tires. Let's break down those three benefits, starting with lightweight. A higher end bike is going to be lighter, which means it's going to be faster. It's going to accelerate faster, and it's especially going to climb faster. It's also going to be more fun to ride. You're not lugging around a heavy bike. You're able to throw it around better. You're able to jump out of the saddle and sprint faster, accelerate faster. All those qualities do really make a bike more fun to ride. The second benefit that I named was stiffness. So a more expensive bike is going to be stiffer, and this is really where carbon comes into play. Carbon allows bike manufacturers to make a bike not only light, but also stiff. During this project, I found that wheels make the biggest difference in the stiffness of a bike and how it rides, followed by frame. So carbon wheels and carbon frame really improve the ride quality of the bike. So a stiff bike is going to turn easier, it's going to hold its line better, and it's going to be easier to control in rough terrain, especially when you're descending. Also, a stiff bike, especially wheels, is going to make a bike that's going to accelerate faster, because when you push hard on the pedals, that power is more easily and more quickly transferred to the wheels to make the bike go. The third benefit that I mentioned is performance, especially in terms of the components. Now, what I found was going from a mid to a higher price level trail bike, I don't get that big of a difference in terms of performance of braking and shifting. Now, like I mentioned in one of my other videos, if we were talking about a low-end bike and then jumping up to a high-end bike, yes, you would definitely notice a change in the performance of these components. The component groups that I used in this project were Shimano XT and Shimano SLX. Both of those are very common component groups that you'll find on mid and high-end trail bike. As far as braking, I really didn't notice any performance difference between the Shimano SLX and the XT. They both even have the lever reach adjustments, which I find very useful to use. Although the Shimano SLX shifter was a little bit more muted, less of a positive feedback than you get with XT, I really didn't find it that big of a deal. Now, one of the main differences between SLX and XT is the fact that you can shift 2 gears at a time with XT when going to a harder gear, whereas SLX, it's only 1 gear at a time. Now, that actually has a little bit of a benefit, because there were a couple times with the XT, I actually shifted 2 gears when I only meant to shift 1. So with the SLX, you do have to hit the thumb lever consecutive times when going to a harder gear. Now, both component groups will allow you to shift to an easier gear 2 or 3 or maybe even 4 at a time when pushing that thumb lever as far as you can push it. The mid-price trail bike that I used has Fox's newer Rhythm fork on it, which has the grip damper. That differs from the fork on the higher end bike, which had a Fit 4 damper, mainly in terms of tunability. So you have more tuning features on the higher end fork. As far as riding on the trail, once I had the suspension set up, I really didn't notice that much of a performance difference. Both felt really plush, both felt stiff. So another difference is the Kashima coating on the higher end fork. That's supposed to allow the fork to be a little bit smoother in its travel. However, with the mid-price trail bike fork, I really didn't notice any difference in terms of smoothness of the suspension. The Kashima coating also may increase the durability of the fork stanchion tubes and the shaft of the shock, but that's not really something I can test during a 1-month project. The quality level in terms of tires was about the same in the mid-price trail bike and the high-end trail bike that I tested. Something that I've noticed about today's modern mid-price trail bikes is the fact that not only are the tires good quality, they're also tubeless ready, and a lot of these bikes are coming with tubeless ready rims. In fact, the mid-price trail bike that I tested for this project came tubeless out of the box. It didn't even come with tubes. It came with sealant, tubeless ready tires and rims. Something else that's really nice about today's modern mid-price trail bikes is the fact that they're coming with dropper seat posts. That is a component that has really been a game changer in trail bikes. Now let's talk about what type of rider should be looking at these different levels of bikes. First of all, if you ride aggressively, you have more experience mountain biking, you're really going to push a bike to the limits, you want a bike to really respond to rider inputs, that's the kind of person that's really going to benefit from the lighter, stiffer bike, i.e. a bike that has a carbon frame and definitely carbon wheels. This is also why a beginner doesn't really need to put money into a high-end bike. They're just not going to get the benefit like a more experienced rider would. A beginner is better off using their resources to invest in things like helmet and riding clothes and shoes and maybe a pump and tools. Those are the kind of things that you really need to get you started off in the sport. And also, in my opinion, I think a beginner really needs to earn their rights to ride a higher end bicycle. It kind of irks me when I see people that are just starting out in the sport and they're on a $6,000 trail bike. Another thing to help you determine how much money you need to spend on a bicycle is how often do you ride? If you're riding once a week, then you probably don't want to invest in a really high-end bike. If you're someone like me who's riding 5 days a week and really pushing a bike hard, then you're probably going to benefit from putting your cash into a more expensive bike. If you're wanting a do-it-all bike, in other words, a bike that can cover cross-country and then burlier trails, that's someone who's really going to benefit from a more expensive bike because they're lighter, they perform better, and a lighter bike is going to be more fun to ride on cross-country trails. Something else to consider when you're trying to figure out how much money to spend on a bicycle is how many bikes do you own or do you want to own? I spend more time on my cross-country mountain bike than my trail mountain bike just because of the terrain that I live in. So if I had to make a decision of which bike do I invest more money in, it's going to be the cross-country mountain bike. Also, if you're going to compete in enduro racing, then you're going to want to spend more money on the higher end trail bike. It's going to be lighter, it's going to be stiffer, and it's going to perform better, which is probably going to make you faster on an enduro course. One of the biggest takeaways that I have from this project is that wheels make the biggest difference in ride quality. I've said it before in some of my other videos and I want to mention it again. If your budget only allows the mid-priced trail bike, but you want to improve the ride quality later on, I would recommend saving up for a nicer carbon set of wheels. That's going to make a really big difference in how your bike rides. So that's going to wrap up this mid versus high-end trail bike project. If you haven't watched some of the other videos, I went into more detail about ride quality, even shows some riding footage and things like that. So I'll link those in the description below if you want to go check those out. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, drop them below. Thanks for watching.